So, after a rather pedestrian start to the season by both Kylian Mbappe and Real Madrid standards, it feels as if it's been quite some time since we've seen Mbappe at his very best. Is it possible that we've already seen the 25-year-old hit his peak? Has Mbappe peaked?
Oh, now this is one. Is this our producer again? He's trying to throw
This
a few
is
little. Well done,
DZ.
DZ. Well done.
Trying to get a soundbite or two.
Oh man, has Kylian Mbappe peaked? Well, this is a sort of question that can come back to haunt you if you give the wrong answer. If I said no, he's going to be the greatest ever. What, honestly, looking at Kylian Mbappe over the last year, clearly he wasn't happy at PSG. Body language suggested that to me. He didn't have a great Euros, that's fair to say. Slight injury worry coming into it. I haven't seen Mbappe at the level I normally would have expected him to be since.
What was the peak? What are we saying the peak
final.
is? Of course.
World Cup final hat-trick.
Yeah.
And that is his peak. So in answer to your question...
Listen, it's a high peak.
Yeah.
We got to be fair and say
it is.
A hat-trick, the only... Well, Jeff Hurst allegedly got a hat-trick in 1966.
Yeah.
We won't go into that. Mbappe gets a hat-trick, obviously in a losing team. It's a high peak.
Yeah.
But has he went downhill since then?
Well, yeah, in answer to your question, yes, he has. And the question is, has he peaked?
Can he come back?
Well, there's a lot of pressure on him now. His numbers are not bad at Real Madrid right now, but his numbers aren't Cristiano Ronaldo and his numbers aren't Lionel Messi. That is the benchmark that's been thrown at probably... His numbers aren't Erling Haaland, even. Everything that's been thrown at every striker in the last 4 or 5 years who's going to be the next guy. We all thought it was going to be Kylian Mbappe, whether it's Erling Haaland, whether it's
Lewandowski,
De Bruyne, I suppose. I'm just talking about like the world top.
Oh, right.
None of them have reached the level of Ronaldo or Messi.
No.
And Kylian Mbappe, you have to be honest and say, since the World Cup, his numbers have been down, and also he hasn't been producing the sort of form that we had saw prior to that World Cup.
Should he abandon the number 9 project? Is he a number 9 or is he a wide left?
All his goals, every bit of his good plays has been coming off the left wing. That's where he's played. Like, remember Thierry Henry played a similar sort of role when he played at Arsenal. It was maybe starting as a 9, yes, but predominantly that sort of movement. If his movement naturally takes him to the left-hand side playing for Real Madrid, he's getting in the way of arguably the best player in world football right now, or one of the best players in Vini Jr. So he can't do the things that he did at PSG or even in a France jersey because of Vini Jr. Yeah. So it hasn't worked whenever I've seen him as a 9.
The expectations of this guy at 2021, moving to PSG for, what was it, 200 million, something ridiculous, was that this was the heir apparent to Messi and Ronaldo. And this was undoubtedly going to be the best player in the world and hold that title for a number of years. And we've not saw that transpire to the point that we're talking about his club team. While he's an outstanding player, Vini Jr., we're talking about him being a better player in that position.
Yes.
And Mbappe having to trade spots to go and try and learn a new position to maybe re-spark a career. That to me tells you that there's some real concern here that this guy has legitimately peaked. Like, his best form was in his early 20s.
Yes, and that happens. I mean, and if that's to be the case, then let's be honest, we can still say he has been a magnificent player, one of the best, but he hasn't done it consistently over a number of years. That's what potentially could happen here.
So what does he need to do to get back to his best?
I'd probably say on the left-hand side. I think it's his best position. Now, the only way you would see it happening feasibly is if they sold Vini Jr., and that looks unlikely. That's the only way I see it, Stevie, for him to return to the numbers of what he'd been producing in the past. I don't see it any other way.
I think that it's a bit of an attitude problem with this guy. I think this guy's ego's got so big that he, trying to play 9, has believed in all the hype, is not producing the performances that he expects of himself and that the world expects of him. And I think instead of stripping it back and getting back to basics and sort of checking his ego at the door and becoming a little bit more humble, working a little bit harder, playing to the strengths that he has, which is his pace and he's running in behind and his dynamic play, if he does not get back to that, if he does not change his mentality, I don't know if he's ever getting back to the peak that we would suggest was in Qatar in 2022. So it's a psychological thing. He's going to have to answer the questions all alone in his mansion at nights. He's going to have to find that hunger again in amongst his $1 billion that he's probably got in the bank and say, my legacy, I don't know what my legacy to end at 23 years old in Doha. I want it to be more than that. I want to achieve more individually and collectively with my teams.
I can't, honestly, Stevie, I can't disagree with that to an extent. I think we know he's got the ability to go on to the next level.
We've saw him do things remarkable.
Yes. We've probably both watched Champions League game. I watched the Classico a couple of weeks ago, and his all-round game in the games that I have seen hasn't been there. I'm talking in terms of hold-up play, his physicality, his work rate off the ball, it hasn't been there. So I think there's many a Real Madrid player that's been able to get away with that i.e. Cristiano Ronaldo. But if Cristiano Ronaldo's work rate isn't there, he's still scoring. So he's still winning your games. Mbappe is not doing that consistently. So that's the difference, isn't it?
Well, Ronaldo found a way to adapt to the lack of physical prowess that he once had. So he found another way of scoring goals, and he's still doing it, albeit in a much lesser league. But with Mbappe, I agree, work rate is missing. I don't think he knows where to run in that number 9 position. I don't think he's unselfish enough to stretch lines, to play in behind the back line, to be the modern number 9, which is a player who gets less touches, who is more about creating space for others, and then bursts into life at the right moment and is absolutely clinical. He's not been clinical. You know, he's getting a lot of chances and he's missing chances. And the game that I analysed closely was the recent El Clasico. Against Barcelona, where in the first half, the line of Barcelona, as we know, is so high. There was numerous chances for him to get that right, get him behind, time his run better. I don't think he fully understands the movements in that central position like he did that wide.
As a wide guy,
it's easy
I would
to
have
see.
found him yourself. It is easy to see you looking right along the line. You can time your run across the park and then going behind. We've seen him do that run so often. But when you're having to spin off the shoulder, the best at it, in my opinion, in the last 25 years, maybe the best ever, is Luis Suarez. He'd go through games without touching a ball, and everyone would go, oh, he's had 3 touches in this first half, but he stretched. He constantly stretched, and then invariably he'd get his goal off the back of it just by continuing to make those runs. Mbappe's not the same sort of player. He's not that type of player. So that's why you're looking at him for numbers and overall creativity, hold-up play, everything. You can scrutinise it because his numbers aren't there in terms of goals, and that's where he's at.
I also don't think his game's developed enough as a team player as well. And what I mean with that is his relationship with Bellingham. As we're seeing, they're playing sort of 9 and 10, and they're getting in each other's spaces. Bellingham's trying to create space for him, and Mbappe's sort of unsure about where to go, and both their performances have dropped off because of it. And ultimately that team, and I'm not blaming only these 2 guys for the lack of success that Real Madrid are having at the early part of this season, but Real Madrid need they guys to be firing on all cylinders, and they're not, because I don't think they're finding a partnership there, which is crazy to think. These guys are world class. We're again scrutinising it to a crazy level, but you would think they would have found ways to play with each other. But I think there's a lot of selfishness to the way that Mbappe plays. I think a lot of things need to be how he likes them, and this is what I say about his ego. He's got to find a way to play with other world-class players, make himself the best he can be, but make them look better as well. That's what truly world-class players do.
It's interesting, really, really interesting.
We'll keep an eye on it. We might be back here in a couple of months eating humble pie, saying that he's got another 15 goals in 10 games or something.
We'll see.
He'll probably embarrass us, but it was a good chat. Okay, Kev, here we are. We're going to have some quick-fire questions around the world of football.
Okay, if you were starting a club today, which of these 4 players would you choose to start in it with? Would it be L.Yamal, Vini Jr., Rodri, or Erling Haaland? So if you had a club now,
wow, what a question.
and you had unlimited resources, which of those 4 would you take?
Well, I think you know who I'm going to pick. It doesn't necessarily mean he's the best player in the group, but if I'm starting a club and I'm making my first signing, I got to pick Rodri, because he's so complete, and because you got to base a team on, well, I probably would have picked a centre back if he was there, but a midfielder, a solidity. I know you're going to hammer me. I know you're going to say
nobody coming to watch it.
Well, he's my first player. I'm still allowed to pick another 10.
Well, no, because no one else wants to come just yet. You've got 1 year with just Rodri, and
you're going to tell me goals win games. You know, the skilled players decide matches, and I agree with that. But you're building a club, and you got to have that engine room right. And he's the best in the world at it, isn't he? We're Man City are missing him at the minute. We're missing watching him. He's been injured for a while, Rodri, but he's outstanding. He's just come off the Euros. He's Ballon d'Or winner, whatever value we put in that. But he's an outrageous player. He does everything in the middle of the park. I think it's quite interesting that Kylian Mbappe's not on this list, isn't it? That maybe shows where we're thinking of Kylian Mbappe these days. Haaland, no, I wouldn't take him as being that player. Rodri, no. Mine would be between Vini Jr. and Yamal, and I'd go with Yamal. Why? Youth, potential for my club to gain money down the line with him as well. You're already thinking about selling him. If that was the case, I don't want to lose my prized asset, do I? So I want to make sure that he's fine, he's happy, and try to do something spectacular over a period of time to build around him. But he is pretty special. He's so special. He is special, yeah. What do we think is going to happen with him? I mean, is he hard to predict? But he's so good. 17, Stevie. 17. How does he get better? How does he keep improving? It's about consistency, and his numbers will improve as he gets older. Hopefully injuries don't affect him. Because we don't even necessarily see the sort of high performance winner mentality because he's such a kid. Like he's so exuberant. So there's not even the signs there of a late teens, kind of early 20s guy where you start to see, all right, this is the path he's going to be as a professional. Yeah. He's such a kid, isn't he? He's so exuberant and happy and smiley. Yeah, it's hard to imagine.
You wouldn't want to change anything from his game, would you? That's the thing. And the only thing that could go against him if his club aren't performing, and they don't get the right players around him, and he's not actually able to play at his best because of others. You know as well as I do, it's not necessarily about the individual sometimes, it's the collective approach of the club and the manager and the coach and things like that. So I'd be interested to see how it goes, but I think he's more in hope than anything else. But I really hope that he goes on to that next level and is a Ballon d'Or winner. Is that guy that we look at in 10 years' time as he's the best in the world. And it's an easy decision when you look at it. Just go, he's the guy.
He's the one. Yeah. Okay. So. Your thoughts on the new Champions League format so far?
Well, this is a good one because
divisive.
When I first saw the format, I'm a traditionalist. I was like, it'll be, I'm probably in preference of the old European Cup style. Your champions go into it and that's it. So there's a bit of me. There's a bit of that in me. If it ain't broke, don't try to fix it. And I felt the old format worked quite well. So I was against it to start with, but seeing how it's now going and I'm seeing the way that it's progressing, starting to get more of an understanding of it, I think I kind of prefer it. I think there's more jeopardy involved towards the last few games. There's going to be more meaningful last 2 or 3 games within the group, within the whole league itself. And there's some big teams under pressure. So I think in that respect, I think it's probably worked already. So I'm kind of liking it. I like it. I'm getting on board with it now. I wasn't at first.
I like it, Kev. I like it. I think it was the group stage of the Champions League was very boring. It's been boring for a few years. There's been very few real upsets. The big guys have progressed quite easily through the groups, and so a lot of the games were kind of insignificant. Even when the big teams were playing against each other, they felt sort of insignificant in a lot of ways. Whereas I think this new format's stirred it up a little. It's difficult to follow, I gotta say. It's a little weird seeing such a big table and trying to work out who really is in jeopardy. There's 4 games gone, there's 4 games to go. It's a little up and down, but I kind of like that chaos as well of it, and the fact that you're playing different teams and you're not in a set group of 4. So I'm all for it. I'm looking forward to seeing the end of it, like you mentioned, the end of the group stage, to see how many teams that we expect to be in the knockout stage are in serious jeopardy. It could be quite interesting.
Well, you look at it now and you've looked at all the sides like, I suppose, Bayern Munich and who got a win the other night, but the sides like some big teams, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid,
big trouble.
I think, will they have enough to get out? But I think that's what makes this last few weeks of the Champions League really more watchable, I think, because as you say, I felt as though the group stages in the last year's format in the Champions League was getting to the stage where you win 2 games, or certainly your first 3 and you're done, that's it.
For sure.
And now it's a bit different from that. So I'm looking forward to seeing this last month or so.
I think it's picking 2 Canadians clubs in Lille, Jonathan David, and Celtic, Alistair Johnson, it's gave they kind of clubs more of an opportunity, isn't it? It's gave them a renewed energy in the Champions League and belief that they can get to maybe not the 8 qualifiers, but in that next group, the 16 in a playoff kind of game to get into the knockouts, or in the knockouts to get to the next round. So I think it's been good. I'm happy with it so far.
Very happy, Okay, let's see where we go. England's top player by the next World Cup will be A, Jude Bellingham, B, Phil Foden, or C, Cole Palmer.
What a question, because I feel like this is at the heart of every English manager's debate. Who do they build a team around? We've been hearing it for years, Kev, haven't we? Scholes and Lampard and Gerrard. Nobody's ever had the nerve to say that this kind of one guy is the star and you'll fit into the picture. They've tried to give everybody their platform to be the star, and it's never worked. So when I look at the 3 and I think about who might be the most reliable to kind of build everything around, I think Bellingham. But Bellingham is a young man who's, seems to be in a bit of a lull in his career. He's still outstanding, but he's in a bit of a lull, and I'm wondering if the sort of chopmanship, playing off the left, playing as a false 9, a 10, sometimes an 8, there's inconsistency to where he's settled. I would like to see Bellingham or Real Madrid say, England, I am an 8, I am a box-to-box number 8. That's where I'm going to play, that's where I want to play, be bold and stick to that position and establish himself. If he does that and he shows the potential that we've seen, I would build my team around him. I'd make him the star, and I'd fit other pieces in around that.
I agree. I think it's Bellingham. I think there's an argument to be made for Phil Foden not to be even playing.
Yeah.
I think because of the balance of the team, I think Foden's top class. I really do think he's top class, as is Palmer. But I could see one of those two players perhaps.
Can they play together?
If they were in the squad together, would they both start? And
I
that's
don't
a
think
valid
so.
question, because does the play become too condensed? Who's going to stretch the game for them? And England found that at the last Euros.
Yes.
We found that with them, didn't we? How they were set up. So I think Bellingham, yes, he maybe had a more steady second half to his first season at Real Madrid prior to the Euros. At the Euros, was he a 10, as you say? They've not nailed a position down for him. Can they do that at Real Madrid with Modric still around? He's still going to get game time. Obviously, Valverde as well, you're a big admirer of.
Yes.
They've got such a strong core to that side in that central midfield. And I think that's why Ancelotti is at the moment thinking, just go and play as a 10. You go and get on the end of things, try and get goals, try and create. I think he's just trying to take the pressure off him.
Yeah, good point.
So Bellingham long term, I see as an 8. I do see him as an 8, and I think that's where he'll probably end up playing for Real Madrid in the next couple of seasons. So yes, I think he's your midfield player. He's probably going to be England captain down the line. So I would say Bellingham would be.
So
England's.
you think it's more a protection thing to have him in different positions and maybe a little bit of pressure off than in the sort of centre of the engine?
He's still 21, isn't he?
Yeah.
21, 22, I think. So the pressure that Ancelotti maybe recognises as that young player coming in, he's taken off to say, sometimes he's played as a 9, false 9, just go and play, just go and roam and play in the wide areas. You go and try and have an influence on the game from an attacking perspective. I think that's what he said to him, Ancelotti, because that's the way he certainly plays anyway. So having him more restricted, playing as an 8, he might feel that the team's a bit more vulnerable because of his age, because of maybe knowing his role and being disciplined. Playing for Real Madrid. So I think that is why that Ancelotti's doing that with him. 2 or 3 years, I think he'll drop deeper.
I hope sooner than later he drops deeper. I hope they just establish that position for him. I think he's got the engine to do it. He's got the technical ability. He's got the size.
Yeah.
I do think that he has all the attributes to be that player. But I think, I get it, they've been protecting him, but I think to continue to protect him, you got to establish his position now and let him play there for a season, 2 seasons. Let him really learn that position enough to play for Real Madrid and be the best man in the midfield.
Yeah.
Next one. Oh, it's another Barca player. Quote from Pedri. Under Xavi, if a player was late, they had to pay an amount of €1,000 for each minute they were late. It would double, I guess, every time he was a minute late. Under Hansi Flick, if a footballer arrives late, he will not be a starter or won't participate in the next game. So it's not about money, it's not about fines, it's about standards, and if you're not there, you miss it.
Yeah.
Which is the better penalty, and what is the most ridiculous reason you've heard a teammate use for being late? So let's talk about the fine against you're not playing.
Yeah.
And then what's
fine.
some of the
I think
reasons?
I think a fine. Ultimately, it comes down to your job, doesn't it? I understand your driving standards. If the timekeeping becomes to a stage where he's late every time, then of course it gets to that. I think it's a drastic decision. You're dropping him from the squad and the team. But a fine is good. I think it definitely disciplines the player. Some people might think you've got too much money, so it's irrelevant.
Saying, let's say it becomes €15,000 on somebody that's on €200,000 a week. Does it even matter? Does it prevent him from being late?
Yeah, standards, I suppose, isn't it? I think you've just got to try and hit home those standards, and hopefully the player will start to get on board with everybody else down the line. That's the way it is. Ultimately, you want to see your best players on the pitch. If it's a top draw player, then
what a decision!
It's a decision.
A game you need to win.
Yeah, that's it.
And you've made a rule that if you're a minute late, you miss the game and you can't play them. That's
so. What is it we want from it? Which is the better one of those two?
Or what are you saying the best one is? You're saying fine, I think.
Any late stories as well, isn't there? I remember we had Paul Jewell at Wigan. Paul Jewell, if someone was late for the bus, he'd just drive off, leave them.
Roy Keane used to do that.
Make your way to the
guys at the service
make
station
your way to the hotel.
Times.
That would be the one thing that sticks in my mind. I think David Moyes would have had that as well in the past. We'd just drive off, leave them. That's it. We're fine. We're done. Let's continue.
Was that more a thing in our day? Being late was a real embarrassment. Wasn't it? My experiences these days.
Usually
guys
there's a real
are late,
reason. Yeah.
And there's a little more leniency, I feel, than when it was in our day. Like you were never late, were you? You were there 10 minutes early.
Yeah.
Sir Bobby Robson used to say, if you're there 5 minutes early, you're late. That was his thing. He said you got to be there. Good pros are there 15 minutes early. Decent pros are 10 minutes early, and bad pros there 5 minutes early.
And that's set in the club, isn't it? That's the mentality, and that's And if you've got a good dressing room, your dressing room takes care of it. The manager doesn't even need to become involved in that. That's what I'd
say. When we go back to the fine or the miss the game one, it should be policed by the captains, the leaders in the dressing room, saying.
As captain, you must have seen something. No, did you not have anything where you were dishing out fines?
My guys were never late.
Yeah,
mate.
yeah. They respected you too much.